Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't manage to come in time, unfortunately, and I apologize for that. We've always met previously in the green hall. It's the red hall now. I think that's the magic of the figures 2017. The policy will be discussed in the red hall this year. Our round table is the only place in the forum where we will be discussing officially and formally the political situation, plus two informal conversations, of course. It should be discussed openly and formally because Yegor Gaidar was not just an economist, he was an outstanding public and political figure who realized the value of different institutions and knew pretty well what of those institutions succeeded and which failed. We meet more or less in the same composition of our discussion club. Some of the adjectives have grown into nouns. One of my colleagues said, and scientist, which is an adjective in Russian, is used now as a noun, and we may combine it with words like silly, educated, etc. Speaking about the political situation in Russia, I might say that politicians are different people, and they are honest people. We can trust them. Surely they make errors, and we'll discuss those errors, but they never do it on purpose or by order, and that's really important. And as always, we start from the results of the questionnaire, which we all filled on before the forum. And, well, each of us did that individually, and so it's just me who knows the summary results. And I'll start from them. What did the experts say, and what is their view of the situation in the country? After that, we'll make a round of discussion. Then, if we have time, there'll be questions and answers, and then the final round of the discussion dedicated to forecasts for the next year and 30-second procedure of awarding the winners of last year competition. So, the presentation, please. Next slide. Nothing changes. Red hole, please press the button to make the slides move. Is that my starting slide or the local one? Well, anyway, I'll begin. Something is happening. Political tendencies. Slide 2, please. Move it to slide 2. A question that was asked to everybody. 3 major events of 2016. Trump, Syria, Brexit, and defeat of the opposition, which wasn't included into the top 3. Trump is really leading. What does that mean? One of the respondents said that in Russia everything is frozen. All the essential events take place abroad. They all admit that Russia's domestic issues depend on the foreign issues, but last year it was different. Our economic problems were leading. They took the first position. Then Ukraine and CIS problems took the second place. In presidential address, there was no word of Ukraine mentioned, and Ukraine is not present in our thoughts of today and our view of the present-day world. There was a special question and the questionnaire, what would you expect after the victory of the Donetsk and Lugansk republics, or if it doesn't happen? There were answers given to them, but these were not considered to be dominant issues. Ukraine is not top ranking in our view of the problems, global problems today. Errors of the year. Well, I said that the experts present here sometimes make mistakes. This is a grave mistake shown here. The mistake that a refrigerator will win the battle against TV. It didn't happen. All those present expected some turbulence coming, worsening of the economic situation, isolation, which will have an effect on the mood of the people. As this didn't happen somehow. The second error made by all the experts present here was that they said that some of the opposition candidates would join the State Duma. Now, thinking back, we are ready to say that it was all obvious that this would not happen, but then all those present here said that some of the independent candidates would come to or be elected to the State Duma, which was not so. So, like Andropov say, we do not know the country we are living in. We do not understand what its stress endurance is. We don't understand who we are and who our candidates are. One of the worthy candidates was Vladimir Ryzhkov, who took the fourth or fifth ranking place in his own district, where people know him pretty well. And it so happens that we do not offer a proper alternative to the electorate. At the same time, we did not judge rightly the degree to which the system is aware of the changes and afraid of them. They decided not to let the possible troublemakers to the Duma, lest something should happen. So we underestimate the stability of the system and overestimate the degree of self-assuredness of the system. What do we expect from 2017? Nothing, strange as it might seem. Last year we asked who would be Russian Prime Minister in January 2017. Most people made the right guess, Medvedev surely, but then different other names were given, Shoigu, Shuvalov, Kudrin, somebody else. Numerous guesses were made. Now, have a look. One respondent named Kudrin, or one said somebody but Medvedev, Others believe in stability. It's not the question of the name of the premier. Change of the premier means change of the political course. So experts present here do not believe that the course will be changed. What do they believe in? What will happen with Russia next year? We see projections on the basis of the previous 2 years. What are the expectations? That the policy of mild suppression will continue. There will be toughening of the situation, but it will be little by little, with no revolution, with no liberal reforms. As for the revocation of the sanctions, well, possibly after counter-sanctions are introduced, the views will change, but that was what they thought some time ago, our respondents thought some time ago. So it was like a nice child game with a flat square where you just rotated it slightly to make the ball inside move to get into the hole. Now we see the ball in the hole, and it's very tough there. It will not leave the hole and move anywhere unless some tectonic changes happen, just turning everything upside down. I mean, an economic catastrophe, a huge war, etc. Then for a lengthy period of time, we may expect the continuation of what we have today. Joseph Brodsky said that's the end of the perspective. In real life, nobody knows anything, but that's the way we feel. I mean, the experts sitting here feel. That is the summary view of their expectations for the next year. We also tried to determine who was the best guesser. The homogeneity was high enough, and practically the whole group came to the finish at the same time, but there was one significant detail. There was one person who said that the composition of the team of our top leader will be changing. He'll start changing the team. Fire at headquarters was another formula used. We didn't really see that. We saw some changes in the governor's ranks, in administration ranks, but these were not total. These were just some individuals. Ivanov was had to give his place to Anton Vaina, whom few of us knew before. Sergei Ivanov is Colonel General, and he was the senior comrade in arms of Mr. Putin. We don't know what their personal relations might have been, possibly quite friendly, because he took that place in the near surrounding of the president for quite a long period of time, and could talk to Vladimir Vladimirovich discussing things and expressing his viewpoints. Anton Vaina, by his generation, by his life story, cannot be viewed as a partner or a person who might object to something, just executing orders, because his whole life Mr. President was far from him and much, much higher. So Vladimir Viner, from a leader of some team, be it formal or informal, is now turning into something different, and Mr. Putin is gaining the authority of complete owner of this situation. This is the prize to the winner. Last time, the prize went to Mr. Levinson, who guessed the right answer to the question asked last year. As for the changes in the composition of the team, this was the right guess this time.
Okay. And now we will move around our table and discuss the four questions that were listed on the program. The first question, that's the changing authorities and the changing opposition leaders. Then Russia and the changing world and what's going on in the world and the correction of institutes and this tectonic shift, and what can we expect in 2017? That's attempts at projecting the future. And so we started with the forecasts and some turbulent things that occurred. But the thing is that I don't mean that we want any further turbulence or any other upheavals, but we would like to understand why those expectations and projections that we made a year ago did not come true. That's why we would like to understand what are the root reasons for that, and what can we say about the situation in Russia, in the other countries globally, and what should we know in order to make more accurate projections. So please abstain from expectations regarding 2017 because we will have a very quick roll poll at the end of our session regarding our expectations and projections for 2017. And so now I would like to ask Mr. Satarov, Yuri Satarov, regarding his opinions. So he was the most optimistic of us all last year. So one I remember when we were asking very brief questions regarding the future, and Timothy Holton from Harvard was one person who is a remote scientist, so to speak. He's not within the environment of Russia. That he mentioned that Parnas would not make it to the elections. And Mr. Satarov was the second person. So only two persons were true in their projections regarding Parnas. And so since they are an optimist, and so the question is about what are the chances of the party as you see them, because yesterday we discussed this point, the points regarding Parnas and Yabloko, and we agree that these parties would disappear from the political arena, so to speak. But we are talking about the future of those people who would like to see and have a different political course, whether these people would have a chance to present their views, whether they have an institution or other persons who, acting on behalf, would voice their views. Thank you. I will briefly comment on one question first, and then I'll focus on the question that you answered. So the Russia and the rest of the world, and what sort of country we're going to have, and who we're going to side with. Well, you know, there are all kinds of myths, and Jews usually are expected to answer a question with a question of their own. And so from the ethnical point of view, I would confirm this myth. So it's not a myth. myths, you mean? Well, it's... well, myths live due to our propensity to support such myths. So I would rephrase one very well-known phrase said by RANEPA. So my answer will be as follows. Why every question regarding the near future of Russia is either immoral or criminal or is very dangerous for one's health. So that's the first answer to the first question. I did not understand anything. I did not understand anything as far as your answer goes. Well, then I will send out in writing my answers. Well, that would be a different thing. Okay, and now a very fantastically interesting question, in my opinion. No, yes, about what's going on in the world, whether we're talking about adjustment of institutions or do we see a tectonic shift globally? Well, for some time, we've been observing this tectonic shift, and for a long time now, from late 1990s, we have been observing the crisis of modern government theories, and that's what we see, this the crisis of the modern times and the crisis of modern governance is a fact, and it's been Scott and Van Kravitz and some other scholars just provided evidence and facts. So this fantastic progress is underway, and the institutions are adjusted to somewhat, but this adjustment of institutional readjustment or adjustment just confirms those deep-rooted changes which are linked to the crisis of the modern government administration. And unfortunately, those adjustments do not happen where such adjustments are best needed. Well, I cannot really give a full answer to this question because these trends and things are very interesting. And the final point that you mentioned, that why nothing happened. Well, truly speaking, we do not know what has happened and what hasn't happened. How can we predict some things that we don't know about? Those things, you started, by the way, by saying that only later on, using our hindsight, we would say that we should have known about those triggers that were pointing to certain trends and processes, etc. But it's only later on, afterwards, that we can say that. And when those questions previously were about the change of Putin's team, that, well, it was inevitable, etc. But those things did happen, and they obviously were to happen. But today's sociologists don't want to see certain trends and facts and evidence, because unfortunately the roll polls and the findings and the surveys in the sphere of sociology, they are twisted and misinterpreted so heavily that right now we cannot really rely on such data. Some ratings cannot be measured by those answers and figures that we receive. So the basic answer is we don't know what really has happened and what really hasn't happened. Well, the thing is, just a year ago, I will clarify my point. When Nemtsov was killed, I found it necessary for myself to respond in the only possible manner for me, although I was not a member of any party and didn't plan to become a member of any party. But so I joined up the Parnas party because I knew more or less accurately his visions about the plans of and the activities of the party, and that's why we thought that it would be necessary to create a joint list of party members, both from Parnas and from Yabloko, the Apple Party, and that, in our opinion, was a significant step that would give this opposition some chances to remain in the political sphere and the political arena. And so what do I think now? Well, I believe that changes are inevitable, and we should expect the inevitable change of generations in the democratic opposition. We had two delays. The first change should have taken place at the end of the 1990s and in the first years of 2001, 2002. And the second shift or change, generational change, should have occurred in 2010 or 2011. And so this explosion of liberal ideas should have been assured by the true opposition, but not by just liberally minded population. So that's something that's what we see, some signs of that. Well, some initiatives, some proposals regarding new faces in this sphere. So speaking about such old-timers as you and myself, the question is absolutely irrelevant, because we will still be looking for some new proposals and ideas. My personal choice would be not to join any other party any time. I would like to follow up on what Yura said, and I think what really happened when what happened during the fall elections. Even if Parnas and Yabloko had united, they would have taken 26%. No, certainly not. But what happened was that the policy politics ended, because, politics, they involve public rules along which politicians walk in order to attain some political objectives. And so the system changed. I'm not saying whether it's better or worse, whether it's good or bad. Some say that, such a political system we do require, we do need in this country, because it has some social roots, etc., etc. But in my opinion, let's say, politics as such in this country are ended. Well, do you agree or not? Well, I'll tell you frankly, I will open a secret to you. When I joined that idea, I just thought because it was necessary at that time. I had like-minded people in both parties who, among other things, were jointly with me making some practical steps. And we all came to one and the same conclusion, that the leaders of the two parties did not mean to win during the fall elections. From the very start, they did not mean to win. So you're quite right, saying that here their politics, their political life and efforts are over, because they wanted to participate in the elections, but they didn't want to win in the elections. So they were pursuing their own objectives, and they were different objectives. And so that's why certainly, anyone can participate individually in the election campaign, but then again, well, people who do that, they strive to win. And so, well, anyway, what I mean that we will be using various options that may be open to us, and certainly not staying away from the general elements. And so my next question is to Andrey Åslund. And Andres, Andrys, he is a brilliant economist. He knows a lot of things, not only about Russia. He has very interesting books regarding Ukraine. He is a very complicated person in terms of, well, socializing and personal contacts, because he keeps offending people. He supported the coup d'etat which happened in Maidan in Ukraine, because he supported it, and now he is writing contrary, very critical things about Ukraine. But he knows a lot about Russia too, because he knows everything, he understands everything, and he's fluent in Russian, and that's he will demonstrate to you in seconds. And so, although you know lots of things, and it's always interesting to talk to you about various things, but I can't help asking you about this situation regarding these, what's happening in the world and what's going on in the U.S. Because, well, I said, well, in your country, in the U.S., well, he is a Swede by birth, but he lives in the United States. So I think that, let's say, a part of our establishment is just as optimistic as part of the socialist establishment. Some years later, the 1917 revolution, when there were hopes or expectations that, well, now that Soviet Russia was in the lead, the rest of the countries, the rest of the world will follow in the wake. But, you know, it's like in New Zealand, one sense. I just remember this reversed map with the inscription South at the top, and when this New Zealand said that we'll never be together. And so that's something that reminded me of the situation regarding the United States, whether we would never be together, and what can we expect of Trump, whether there would be a new political course, whether we should expect a new Yalta, what Trump would require from Russia in return for better, let's say, good steps. So you have 5 or 6 minutes for your answers. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here again. And the first thing, speaking about America, that is that Trump certainly he wants to do something jointly with Putin, and sort of Putin and Berlusconi are his favorites. They are his type, his sort of a person, because and one doesn't need to have democratic views in order to make such observations and come to such conclusions. But his conclusion is that only Trump himself and Flynn, his National Security Council, have such views, and we lately have seen the presentation of candidates into the ministers, and they represent traditional Republican policy. And herein lies a very great problem for Trump. And I guess there would be, maybe within the next 3 months, we will have a summit meeting between Trump and Putin. And only then we will see what would be done. And Trump has lots of plans, what he wants to implement, but we don't know whether they are just will lead to a new Yalta. So you've seen the presidential orders in the United States over the past couple of months, and so it's well, there is a procedure, but let's say executive orders is one thing, and and the laws and acts is a totally different thing, because if some political decisions are formalized as acts, legislative acts, it would be very difficult for Trump to revoke them, or if he even tries to reverse sanctions. I'm not really so right now the sanctions were imposed on Russia against Russia according to the executive order by President Obama. But once the Congress approves it as an act, then it would be very difficult to revoke it.
What would be better for Russia, we don't know, because 10 senators today, 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats, have proposed a new bill to the effect of sanctions against Russia as a hacking. And that's a threat against Trump because the Congress will easily overcome presidential veto. But I want to answer the first part of the question too. Like others in the hall, I don't think anything will happen this year. I've been listening for 3 days here. People are very polite. They sit and listen very attentively. No one is shouting. We see that there's demand for changes, but slight demand. Nobody is ready to fight for changes. And on the other hand, I see that the panelists are composed mainly of ministers, quite educated, knowing in their business, and they are discussing minor changes to the existing systems. When I came to work in Moscow some years ago for 3 years, we all realized that this system is not optimal, but nothing will happen in the near future, and it would be better to wait until something really happens, knowing that this will not happen today or tomorrow. And the same feeling is obvious concerning Ukraine. 3 years ago, we discussed Ukraine as the main topic, and annexation of the Crimea was discussed especially from the political viewpoint. Now looking at the events in Ukraine, we realize that this wasn't an issue of democracy, but the issue of an enemy. I was an Oxford student during the Falkland War. It was a stupid war, and what came out of it, all the British students were hearty patriots, and they were in favor of this war. I didn't understand, and I realized that I was wrong, possibly because people as patriots stand for their country in times of war, and that was the reaction of Russians as patriots during the annexation of the Crimea. What was done, and we do not discuss Ukraine anymore. We discuss Ukraine in this country not as a democratic alternative. Well, that's what it is now. Andreas, thank you, but I still have a question. Be brief in answering. The events of today in the USA, the victory of Trump, and even if he didn't win, half the population is for him, and that reflects the mood of the country. Half the population is for his slogans. I was in Cleveland at the Republican convention when they nominated Trump, and his nomination speech evoked horror in me. And what is happening in the USA now and in many countries of Europe, the upsurge of primitive ideas. Marine Le Pen, they said, is 2 points ahead of Fiona. In Greece and Hungary, Austria, we also see similar processes. What does that mean? Is that the pendulum typical for the Western countries, or is that some change of principle which marks the start of a new stage in the development of the Western society and consequently our own? There are different phenomena in that. In the USA, there's alienation between Washington and the country. I live in Washington. How do secretaries and people working in the Obama administration, how do they come there? They come from the think tanks. What is there for university professors from universities of the countries? Nothing. Even if they get a nomination to some post there, they'll have to wait for 1.5 years for the Congress to approve it. In the times of Helm Dumgert, half Harvard came there. And nothing similar happens now, and Washington works for Washington. Everybody realizes that 90,000 lawyers and barristers function in Washington. They do it for the purposes of the state, and people see it as parasitical activity. Washington, New York, Los Angeles is the only cities described and discussed in the press. People see it, and Trump used this alienation. And played on it. In Europe, we see a different tendency. There's the situation with the migrants who pose a huge problem. In Sweden and Germany, for example, there are too many migrants who brought disorder with them and no readiness to adjust. International organizations have worked for 70 years perfectly well, but people do not understand that they are really relevant. This is a problem. In Washington, they talk now much about international organizations and their disappearance together with the coming of Trump. Then new organizations should be developed. Mr. Gelman, a question to you. Mr. Gelman is a representative of the transition period. He has worked in Helsinki for half a year. I spent half a year in Helsinki and half a year in St. Petersburg. Well, we may consider Finland to have been part of the empire, but they don't think so now. So you are in between two worlds for half the year. Tell us, does Europe change seriously, or will it all come back to the status quo, and do they view us as part of Europe? In fact, 5 or 6 minutes to coming back to the discussion of why our predictions fail to come to life. I may say that very often we overestimate what is happening here and now. An economic crisis happens, we call it a Great Recession. Forces opposing the establishment become popular due to some circumstances, and we immediately say that the world is changing dramatically. But if we step away from today's reality just a bit, we'll see that much less is really changing or transforming than we might think. The example given by Anders about American policy, the slogans of fighting the establishment practically helped to form the new administration, which is just promoting the establishment and its interests. These are bankers, heads of big companies, etc. We see similar processes in Europe. Greece was mentioned. Syriza, started from opposing but finished by complying with the orders of the European creditors. In Finland, where I work, the party of the true Finns came to the government, and it was very popular with anti-immigration slogans, but they are pursuing the same policy as the traditional parties previously did, and their popularity is falling to the single digits level. Now, in April, there will be local elections, and I'm sure they will lose the places they win. So we live in a paradigm set dozens of years ago, when in the Soviet Union they wrote about the overall crisis of capitalism, its stagnation, and predicted that we will soon be on the top. In the Soviet time, the authors of all those forecasts were the people who understood that this would take much time and that stagnation would take much time. Now, those who write about it, they say it will come tomorrow. Something will change dramatically, but it comes little by little. Changes do not happen overnight. Very often we don't see them as the result of some conscientious acts. This was what I was given the prize for. Changes in the leading team in Russia. Well, we might suspect some intrigues and say that something happened with Ivanov. But in fact, we see a natural process of the change of generations. It takes place at the level of business, education, science, and the political leadership of the country. And surely we see reaction to those processes on the part of the head of the state. There's nothing strange in that. Georgy mentioned that the change of generations came late in the opposition communities. I was born in 1965, and I am the youngest of those present here in the rostrum. Tactless, surely tactless. You might say you are the youngest in the audience. Well, the audience will know better, but it seems to me that very often in our deliberations we overestimate some conscientious acts of some political figures without due concern of the background processes. And this explains why we do not expect changes, but expect the status quo to continue. We see it in this wonderful chart. The inertia scenario is presented there when more than 80% predict that things will stay as they are. We pay more attention to the political scenery, to the present actors who are interested in preserving the status quo, like Anders said. Those not interested in that do not have any ability to realize influence on the outcomes. But we do not take into consideration other processes, much more serious ones, change of the generations, change in the technology, advances and their effect on the everyday life of common people, migration crises, and that explains our lack of success. I proposed that refrigerator would be more relevant for our life than the TV. Surely refrigerator is relevant when during the previous 15 years the real revenues of the households grew 2 and more times, and then they fell by 15% or so. We should not expect a radical transformation in the perception of reality by our people. Possibly, if the process continues and the real revenues continue to fall, we'll see some changes. But inertia has its own force, and I don't know what is worse, when inertia blocks changes or when there's a sudden collapse or break in the previous scenario and new trajectories emerge. That is true not only for Russia, but the whole world too. And yet I would not overestimate the changes which we witness here and now. Sometime later we'll realize whether these are dramatic changes or possibly just the movement of the pendulum, which will come back to its initial position. Thank you. I do ask everybody to stick within the time limit. Take the mic, Tatyana Vorozheykina, dealing with comparative politics. What is your view of what expects us?
Thank you. So I'm a specialist in Latin America, and I do comparative analysis, and all the time. And she asked me not to disclose that fact, but nevertheless, I would like to touch upon two issues. The first question that was asked by Leonid regarding the overrating of lack of stability. So why did we overrated the political, economic, and other and social instability? Because the rates of instability, level of instability, proved higher than in 2014 and 2015 and last year. Although I always write my speeches and presentations due to this limit of time allocated to me, so my completion is that the forecast under the conditions questions of full lack of certainty sounded as follows. So nothing would be happening and an inertia-based scenario would be developing. And so that would be the general background. And so I certainly don't remember all the minute details last year, but let's say I allowed for 50% of options regarding the economic collapse this year. And so being invited here, I decided to look into this issue. Why are we mistaken in our forecasts and expectations? And I would like to mention one very important thing which is very often in the blind spot of most analysts. We're talking about the role of violence in the emergence of the Russian totalitarian state. The Second Chechen War brought Putin into the top power and became a very important social factor as far as social degradation goes. And violence, since then, the right of the strong one, has become approved on the social level and political level. And what's more important, it's approved at the very top. At the same time, the Chechen War and its consequences for the country and for the population, for the society, hasn't been discussed for the past 16 years. And just with a few exceptions, such as Politkovskaya and Listemirova, who paid their lives for their publications. So the publications and discussions for the past 16 years have been almost null. The same applies to the war which Russia unleashed in the Ukraine. It's also in the blind spot as far as analytical work goes. And the same applies to the participation of Russia in Syria, at the side with Assad. That's the destruction by Russian aviation of Aleppo and the destruction by Russia of other landmarks and elements of infrastructure is quite obvious. And this is just a demonstration of the internal function. All these things are aimed to strengthen Putin's authoritarian rule, given the erosion of the social institutions. And this institutionalization of violence has proved to be very successful. Mr. Åslund mentioned that a bit from another angle, but we've been talking about the same thing. This institutionalization of violence generated the worsening of the quality of life, the reduction of revenues, of people's revenues and incomes, and it proved to be a negative factor on the whole. So we've been expecting economic crisis and devastations and upheavals for several years now. And since the middle of the 19th century, the general social debate is linked to the problem of authority, political leadership, and society. So all other questions, all other challenges relating to culture and the social issue, they came second. And according to Levada, now at the beginning of the 21st century, we still remain at that level. And unfortunately, the political community in Russia is focused exclusively on the questions of authority, of power, and various groups which are in power and would like to get into this powerful environment. As far as society goes, well, here the situation is different. Let me quote Serebrennikov, who at the Echo of Moscow discussed all the all the other social issues. So what are journalists talking about, and what are invited speakers on the radio speak? So 90% of them on both sides discuss their attitudes towards the circles of power, the top authority environment, and how to get into that environment, into the ruling circles, ruling class. And so maybe that's the main problem why we make mistakes in our focus, because we've been talking only about authority, about power, and this environment. And here we run the risk of missing and failing to notice very significant destructive processes. Let's go back 100 years ago, because there's at the beginning of the 20th century, there's not just a hint in publications of journalists, etc., about the catastrophe that was impending. And so we don't know whether there was a catastrophe or not a catastrophe. Just we started with this discussion because we don't know what has happened, what hasn't happened. That's how we build our social and political discussions. No one is ready to fight for changes, because no one knows where such changes should lie. And I'm in a hurry. I'm in a hurry, and I'll try to speed up my speech further. So we don't know what's happening in the world, either institutional adjustments or tectonical shifts. Let's say the thing is that we saw back in the 1960s structural shifts within the capitalist formation, and the speed of globalization and the speed of development generated a very strong activity of various stratas of population. The Red Belt in the United States, as we see right now, just voted for Trump, supported Trump, which is an exception to the rule, because if you close down all food plants and facilities, the situation of the native population of this Red Belt would not change. And so the same applies to the massive support of Marine Le Pen, because, well, she relies on this support of those forces which previously supported left wing and leftist forces. And I think that Berlusconi was mentioned here, and he's a prototype of a right-wing populist leader whom we see a rise in various countries in the world. And so we may talk about deep-rooted reasons and underlying reasons. So what happened and what in the Netherlands, in other countries, whatever, but the breakthrough point fell on 2016. So what can we say about Berlusconi? In which way this politician differs from the other politicians? His attitude towards politics is the same as to business. He's running political issues as he's running corporate businesses, and Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin are politicians of the same type, of the same sort. And here I fully agree with Mr. Åslund, because, well, just are in the same group. And last year, 2016, it turned out that those who had been considered marginal politicians, I mean Orban and Putin, all of a sudden came to the fore. They became the leaders, the frontline leaders. And so thus it means that we have exhausted the agenda of the 1960s. And I mean that previously it was orientation towards the human being, the human rights, diversity of various freedoms, etc. All these things have been achieved last century, but we see that this achievement was very short-lived. And now we also see another crisis. Just well, another crisis of liberalism is staring us in the face. And I can refer you to one of the editions that was published just on the verge of the new year. And so we see the general rejection. That's what we see right now, the general rejection of the universal freedoms and rights, the rule of law, which has been protecting people from the arbitrariness of the state, of government. And so this slogan, which was moved forward, proposed by Viktor Orban, and now we see that it's being supported by Polish and etc. Politicians. We see the rise of the right-wing xenophobic populism. Left-wing populism is limited to Greece, Portugal, and well, Spain, whatever. Well, I've been following the political situation in Portugal for some time now, but it's very difficult to tell them apart, right-wing and left-wing parties. So we'll have to just see how they will shape out. Another thing that we've got to watch out for, that's the political elections in France, and the outcomes of such presidential elections is the most important thing for us. So we have to read a lot right now about the fact that Trump will be experiencing a very strong resistance from the American establishment. And I can only say here that various institutes are the results of various conventions, and Trump is the violator of conventions, and I think that's a very dangerous trend and change, Dima. And so, Mr. Oreshkin, I will not introduce him. Everyone seems to know him. So Oreshkin said on various occasions that we are headed towards disintegration of the country, territorial disintegration, and he was quite positive about that. And so to some extent, I am pleased that you were wrong, that this is not true, because, well, this disintegration wouldn't have been quiet. Well, I, just as Tatyana, will start from the end, and the final thing, and the last thing. And so you'll be responsible. You'll be responsible for what you say, for your words. And so the first question was about the developments in the world. I think that what we are seeing is a tectonic shift. And for different reasons, demographic reasons. We see new generations, information shifts, because everybody is now living in the net, and standardization of technologies, and we are using basically the same types of brands and the same gadgets and cars and machinery. And also we see and focus on national identity. The global shift is that we have entered the epoch of leaders, and populism, and that's why the previous ideas of TV sets and refrigerators is no longer the order of the day. So what's is a top priority right now? Leaders. It doesn't matter whether left-hand leaders or right-wing populist leaders. The thing is that they are leaders, and these leaders truly consolidate groups of population under their slogans. That's what's happened in Italy, or what we see what's going on in Greece and in Russia. And so any words that we can voice, that we can shout out loud, are in vain, because they cannot hear us. But we, on the other hand, liberals of the Gaidar type liberals, we have fulfilled our task. So the country has received market economy, currency conversion, and a normal consumption level. So these tasks have been resolved. So whether some call it pseudo market relations, etc., but nevertheless, young people are no longer interested in those topics that we're discussing because, in their eyes, we are just professors teaching them, or lecturing them on economics in the schoolroom, or just theorists. And so I think that now we shouldn't speak about the state or statehood or about the crisis of statehood, but I think we've good discussed leadership and so a state implies laws, and so the laws also cover the election campaigns and procedures. And so so as a leader in this particular case, like tribal leader, is different. Tribal leaders, they are consolidated with the people, but not with the procedures and legal procedures. So right now, the opposition has degraded to the level of Soviet dissidents. It has been pushed down to this level on purpose. Such members of the opposition can say to the tribal leader that, it's Lent and you shouldn't be eating meat during Lent. But that's all what you can. The refrigerator is useless and helpless as the tribal leader is concerned, because, the tribal leader, by definition, is the head, the leader of a tribe, and that's why he is the leader. He moves the tribe towards some target in some direction, so he's not standing still at a certain point in place. And finally, the country has never been so split deep inside as now, and the elections of 2016 demonstrated this huge split within the country. And we see Chechen Republic 94.4% sort of seem to be to have voted in support of the Russia United. Second comes Dagestan, then Ufa, and then the only Kemerovo Republic, which is also let's say local tribal area of Armantulev, which is like Sultanate. I spoke about, mentioned the percentage of voters, of those who voted, and that turned up for the elections, but not for registered voters. In St. Pete, for instance, that's 13% of all the registered voters. Moscow is also around 13%. Novosibirsk and Novosibirsk region also 3.3%. So the European part of the country is dormant. Anyway, they don't support the ruling authorities. And as far as the Far East and the southern areas, with great enthusiasm, support all the initiatives which are proposed from the top. And the situation just mirrored the situation in 1990 when
the Baltic republics didn't participate in the referendum. Some republics, like Ukraine, changed the formula of the question. They used the words state sovereignty in the wording of the referendum, and 5 eastern republics from Turkmenia to Uzbekistan, like Chechnya, Tuva, Kalmykia, and Kabardin-Balkaria, now they supported the status of the Soviet Union. And this asymmetry is quite obvious today. Moscow and the leading regions experience cognitive dissonance now. They don't like what is going on now, but they are not going to do anything with it. Different values are relevant. The Eastern republics are the tribal leader type ones, and the European part would prefer something else. I don't say that the country will collapse. I am saying that internal contradictive tendencies diverging to different systems of values are becoming more and more obvious. And these are values of the Orient and the West, and taking into account the organized manner of voting in the Eastern republics, so we might even be worried by that degree of consolidation. Like in the stagnation period, internal problems are getting accumulated, and when a new leader comes with new promises and promises of new changes, the system that seems very stable, sustainable, inertia type to us might turn out to be very weak. We, as ideologists of this type of liberalism, have nothing to propose. We are the people of the past. New people are coming, speaking a different language. And as for the integrity of the Russian Federation in future, the integrity which is guaranteed today by one person, and our belief that he is leading us somewhere of which we are not quite sure. The sustainability of the system is balancing on the sustainability of this axis-like person, which, like a nail, holds all the structure suspended or stable. Mr. Petrov, last time he metaphorically said that our country is like an airplane which is crashing down, and what would be the task of the pilot, I asked, and he said just catapulta, salvation. So, for how long might we live in this period, Nikolay? You mentioned that the possibility was that our country is in some temporary period of stagnation, or possibly something else. I am in between Gaidar liberals who are ready to leave. That was his personal opinion. And the young generation who is younger than others and has a different viewpoint. Well, this always happens with this brave young generation. I do not agree with Vladimir. And to start with, I'll say a few words about what is going in the world. The Kremlin hopes that the events in the world make the rules of the game change, and there'll be no coming back to the rules of 2014. Those who realized that the rules are changing will gain the most, because they take what they can steal and get as far as they can get. As for the chaos and the new world order, that will let us get out of the situation without losses. I wouldn't expect that, and I think that stability of the world order and the minuses of the populists incoming to power will account for a negative effect on our country of what is going on in the world. I will not go on confessing that I'm guilty not to have guessed the right answer. This year really was very essential. I do not agree with Vladimir that this is just a change of generations. With this change of generations, the political structure is changing dramatically. Previously, we saw partners and servants around Putin. Now we see them leaving, and we see devoted servants around him, which changes the situation dramatically. And this is an essential maneuver that suppressed the potential opposition of the elites to the change of the political course. And I think that this year might witness what I expected last year, that is a radical change, getting ready for which the Kremlin is suppressing now all potential hotbeds of the opposition of the elite. So the dates change, but my position stays the same. The world that a year ago looked more stable, especially from that falling plane window view, now looks much less stable or sustainable. As for the power of the opposition, yes, you were right, because not a single representative of the opposition is in the Duma now, and that's the problem of the authorities. Taking the short-term prospect and being rational within it, the authority creates problems for the long-term period. When we say that the inertia scenario that tomorrow will be like today might get broken because of accumulated risks, and this is happening regularly and problems are accumulating. So this inertia scenario does not presuppose the status quo. It means that problems will be coming which are not tackled today by anybody. Populism brings a very short-term prospects, and strategically that's losing position, especially in our country. Thank you. Nikolay is not the only one who changes the dates of the focus. Vladimir Mayakovsky also predicted the revolution to come in suffering in 2016, but previously 1916, but previously that was 1912. So he changed the dates. All those present here today spoke about problems that get accumulated, needs for changes, but in the questionnaires, just look at the left three columns. The inertia scenario, expectations of it for the 3 years have grown, and they are above 80% now. This is what we as experts cannot characterize. Andrey Kolesnikov, who is known to us as an outstanding personality, writing very interesting texts on different political issues in the recent period, is in a different position. He is head of the Russian program in Carnegie, and is communicating with people who think that they know much and speak about the future events, and surely this must have enriched your understanding and knowledge. I haven't changed my positions. I was for the inertia scenario even when we started all those meetings in 2012. Use the mic, please. So I've always been for the inertia scenario, and I never thought that serious changes would be coming or outbursts were in store. And the catapult approach might be the one recommended for the population in case of an outburst. Well, they approved of our political panel this year too, and as they did previously, and each time we feel how strange it is. They should have objected to it, and possibly they'll do it next year. But yet we extrapolate our situation of today for the future. I never thought that the refrigerator was fighting against the TV. They are together. Whatever you watch over TV, you accompany it with something you take from the fridge. And unlike the Soviet period, we have the food for the fridge. It doesn't disappear despite different campaigns and economy situations. In the Soviet time, there was a joke. Lenin showed that a kitchen wife can govern the state. Stalin showed that one person can govern the state. Khrushchev showed that a fool can govern the state, and Brezhnev proved that you may do without governing the state. We think that we live under an authoritarian regime, and that's true. Details are in the discussion whether this is liberal democracy or a hybrid regime, etc. But paradoxically, within this situation, we see the Brezhnev situation. Everyone cares for his or her own situation exclusively. The people are not interested in what the authorities are doing, and the authorities are not interested in the people. The logic of the negative adaptation to the crisis is prevalent, which says, the best thing will be in not getting the situation worse. Somebody's response to the question by communists who said, well, you don't like the authorities, why don't you vote for us? And the answer was, when you come to power, we'll be voting for you. This is bad balance, the so-called Nash balance, when nobody wants to move the first, because that might disrupt the balance of the situation. Nobody moves, preferring this to something dramatic. This is bad inertia. We are within the inertia scenario, but this is bad inertia. And there was another Soviet time joke when a new Congress is getting together, the Congress of the ruling party, and the announcement is all the people in the hall get up, and the political bureau will be brought in a moment. And creating a distance from the near circle when they dismiss people who previously were friends and colleagues around Putin and changing them for the servants, loyal servants. Well, it changes the situation, but not dramatically. Can Kirienko change the law on foreign agents? No, not even in principle. The law on Dima Yakovlev, he'll not even try to do it. Why should we say that this might be liberalization? Nothing like that will happen. Since 2012, more than 30 new repressive laws have been taken, and the new Duma will not have to continue with that because the ministries are doing that for that, and they abuse human rights, invented the anti-smoking concept, saying that those born in 2015 will never smoke. They will not have the right to do it. And the St. Asik Cathedral, which is given back to the Orthodox Church, is another event like that. And when people can be deprived of the single apartment if they have debts and haven't paid those debts. And so this is something that's I would call inertia, and that we would see in the future. Whether we should expect an explosion, I don't know. When an explosion may come, again, it's not. It's very big. It's not known. And consolidation of the people, let's say, the bad form of consolidation, because well, the nation de facto is in a state of war. That's a consolidation around the flag, and so we have people from the United States, and so this rally around the flag, they understand that there's a very strong instrument to mobilize population around the flag, and so Putin is doing exactly the same. And so if Trump will make friends with us, so we would see some erosion. If Le Pen and somebody else would be making friends with us, then we don't see, we will see how this very idea, the very notion of an external enemy would be losing its shape. And well, Syria has become a routine event for our news. And so despite the seeming stability of this inertia scenario, I believe that lots of things would remain unchanged. And so, well, what's the difference whether Medvedev will be replaced by somebody else at the post of prime minister? So no one cares, truly. And another thing which I would like to mention at the end, well, presidential elections are not important. Parliament elections are not important. And so, well, it doesn't, well, Putin will remain in power. And, well, it's irrespective whether the population would approve of this election and to what extent. But what is important is the forthcoming municipal elections, because people are displeased not with the political authorities at the top so much as with the actual administrators in their municipalities, because, well, they use bulldozers and all kinds of, well, their Russian Orthodox churches, bulldozers, and heavy machinery in order to push their way in backyards and in the streets in various municipalities. So when, let's say, a municipal
legislature deputy comes to an area of debates, of heated arguments, and it doesn't matter whether this municipal representative and deputy represents the Yabloko or Parnas or any other political party, because that's the person who would be dealing with everyday realistic problems of the people. Thank you. And so this orthodox bulldozer, I think that's a very good finding, this coined French phrase. And that's one thing. And secondly, basing on what Andrey said, that municipal elections are very important due to the grassroots, etc., etc. But the thing is that they require time. Yes, all this will have effect, positive effect, if we have time ahead of us, and that's something that we don't know. And last but not least, Denis Dragunsky, because he's will be the last but not least speaker, because he's a writer. He's not that caliber of a writer as Prokhanov is, but we just heard mentioned romanticisms, ideas, whatever. Well, you certainly are a far cry from Prokhanov, but in contrast to Prokhanov books, Dragunsky's books are read by the people. And so apart from the economic statistics and all those figures, apart from the roll polls and canvas findings and figures, which are also very important, there is a feeling, or this feeling, those who are here at the podium and those who are sitting in this room, we have this feeling that something is going on, something is happening. What was yesterday is impossible today. What's impossible today all of a sudden becomes possible and mandatory tomorrow. And I remember even such outcries or such scenes when some people started, put me on the list of homosexuals, or vice versa, put me on the list of homophobes. Well, it doesn't mean that people, for instance, had phobias against some nation or social threats, against Jews, against Caucasian nations, against homosexuals or anything, whatever. But previously it wasn't possible to just publicly say, well, put me on the list of homophobes. And we think that something terrible is going on. And Denis, well, I will try to answer this question. But first, I would mention my feelings regarding the failed forecast that we have been demonstrating for a long time, for several years in a row. Why we are not talking about the inertia scenario? Why do we try and forecast very sharp and drastic changes? Because we are very passionate people, maybe because we just welcome and want very much such drastic changes. And I think, and I refer it first and foremost to myself, this is political ignorance, because back in 10 years ago, I wrote a lot about various matrices which are being unfolded in this country. There are automatic stabilizers of any regime. That's the age and the distribution of population. In 1917, the average and ideal age of the Russian people was 19 years. So the revolution was inevitable. 19. Over 50% of the entire population of the Russian Empire was younger than 19 years old. Right now, this age is, well, in 2017, it's 40. So 40 is totally different, speaking about social outbursts and explosions tensions and social discontent. This is something unprofessional, incompetent to say as from the political science view, because, well, it's different. The next distribution of people among small and large cities, well, those people who live in small towns or townships, they have a pathological desire for self-preservation. Well, maybe it's not a pathology, but nevertheless, it's a drive to preserve their township like this. Understand it as perceive it as a gut feeling, and they want to preserve their identity within the small town. So I cannot imagine this kind of behavior in St. Peter or in Moscow, in any other major. Then there are such things as the vegetable garden, mortgage loans, children, and all those things. A lot of many years ago, we could very rarely hear. This is a very common phrase. You can just hear it all the time. And then the taxation. So all the taxes which we have to pay are very numerous, almost 45 taxes. And so personal income tax, for instance, is payable at the source, so the employer. So it means that if the salary, the salary is 100,000 per month, and the annual amount would be 1.2 million rubles, and only once a year they have to take their tax returns to the tax administration. So it's a totally different thing if people are responsible for this, for the payment of taxes once a year, instead of what we see every day. Recently, I read an article on the internet of Yegor Didkov. He was very popular in 1990s. He comes from Kostroma, and he wrote some extracts from his diary regarding that people missed food, so to speak, at the end of the 1990s. And so he was writing about those years in 1990s when people were hungry and they wanted, well, speaking about the refrigerator, people wanted, and in response to his internet publications, we see comments, and comments said, well, bones, they're just beautiful. Why do you need meat? Bones are very good for soup, etc., etc. So people are becoming very hard-shelled and very cynical. And what is going on right now? Maybe it's a sign of hypocrisy. And La Rochefoucauld was speaking about this hypocrisy, and but now we see very few people who are afraid of hypocrisy, of being hypocritical. For instance, well, when people say they are very vocal about, well, violence that Ms. Vorozheykina mentioned, and the people say very openly, okay, so he's a thief, and so what are you against thievery, and who are you, whatever. And it's violence has become not only an instrument for the authorities, but also the aim to look up to. And so when, for instance, people discuss the Viking, and when Vladimir raped Ragneda and then killed all her family, so what's your attitude to this violent act? Well, the most comments say that, well, everything should be, all the facts, all the actions should be viewed within the historical context. And so Ms. Vorozheykina said quite correctly about the general crisis of liberalism. Yes, I agree with that we are going through the liberalism crisis. What does it mean, freedom? What exactly do we mean when we say liberal? What are the roots? Well, not just Greek or Latin. Who knows the origin of the word svoboda? That's Russian. Svoboda comes from svoi, one's own, and libera, that would be a liberty. That's children of the right people. So when we use the word liberty, these are the rights of our group, of our family, or let's say my family, my group, my tribe, etc. So any liberalism was only possible at the level of one tribe, one nation, whatever. We have this freedom, and you may do without any freedom. Speaking, when we, let's say, remember British aristocrats in India, being gentlemen, they understood that liberalism is maybe preserved and exists only among gentlemen. But as far as Indian sipais go, well, why should a British gentleman think about liberalism as far as sipais go? No, of course not. And so then we saw migration and development of technologies. We saw the influx of new people, and they are of different age, of different educational level, of different salaries and wages, and of different color of skin. And so when it turns out, so liberalism, let's say, loses its spine, it's because, well, some passionate people would say, well, it doesn't matter what you are saying. But at the same time, it's very, others would say, I'm a racist, I'm a homophobe, I'm a killer or whatever. As Breivik said, for instance, we're not asking for anything. We just want to have 4% of Norwegian territory where we could live according to the free laws of the white society, white people. We would be surrounded from the rest of the world in the forest, and that's exactly what we want. We don't want to tell anyone what to do. We just want to live as free people and whatever. And maybe there may be a very astute young man who would be of the same age as my grandchildren. I may look very young, but I have already grandchildren who are over 20. But so present here today, so they may have different views of liberalism, not from the sort of European sort of perception of liberalism, but liberalism or liberal ideas that would not generate any violence. And we still have, well, I understand that, well, I'm to blame because we started later, I was late, and so Jews are also always to blame for everything else. Okay, and so we spoke about focus for the future. And so as for the collapse of the inertia scenario is only possible when we see a political catastrophe, which is something I don't wish either for myself or for my children and grandchildren. Now let's see the following. For different reasons, bad weather and my being late, we don't have unfortunately, time for a round of questions and answers, and so I urge you to deal with your questions informally. But nevertheless, I still have a very short round of questions to address to all our speakers. Everyone mentioned here the inertia scenario. You mentioned it in your questionnaires, and then when you were giving direct testimony, you decided to change your testimony a bit, but nevertheless, what do we expect in 2017? I think that we should speak about the magic of figures. We were moved to the red hole, and we're still saying that there will be no revolution, although there is this hint about the red hole. And for the society and for the political authorities, the year 2017 is a symbolic year. It's a symbolic history where everybody would try very hard in order to avoid any repercussions or revolutions, because no one wants, let's say, the return of the events of 1917, because that wouldn't be good for anyone. And so all of you present here participated in this questionnaire, in this canvassing, and so let's try and compare your predictions and forecasts next year, when and if we meet again. And so I'm asking an open question to all of you present, so that you could name from 1 to 3 major events that would happen in 2017.
Well, if somebody is ready, you may start. I'm ready. In 2017, one thing will happen, a major financial disorder, in the result of which the government will find itself in a situation similar to what the Yeltsin administration faced in his time, and the premier or vice premier will be some personality like Kudrin, who will start introducing an authoritarian and tough financial and economic reform. We wrote it down. Next. I insist on the picture of the plane in a spin situation and no possibility of changing the pilot. So in 2017, there'll be a quick maneuver with 2 possibilities. One is liberal economic reforms and toughening the political sphere. Second movement towards further authoritarianism, and all will depend on the events in the global arena and whether there'll be the honeymoon with Trump. Anders? I foresee 3 events. First, I think that relations between Trump and Putin will be most relevant. Another thing, possibly, Trump will break down a couple of international organizations, which surely will be a tragedy. And third, the problem of the Kremlin is that there'll be no external enemy left. So the event happening will be that there will be no external enemy left. Next. Satarov, please. I think that nothing will be happening. The presidential elections will take place in their due time, and Putin will preserve stability to bring the country slowly to the election without any shattering or violence. Everything will be given to sustaining financial, food stability, stability of employment, and personnel, and possible changes might be related with presidential elections, the promises, post-election actions, etc. So the measures undertaken will be related with the necessity to sustain stability, possible romance between Putin and Trump. On the one hand, it will be hard for Trump to take dramatic maneuvers, rejecting possible alliance with Putin and policy. On the other hand, this could be done after selling their romance with Putin, say for the price of a victory over Putin and foreign policy. And that surely is dependent on the condition of a financial crisis or skyrocketing oil prices, situation when Trump promises some substantial help, which on the one hand can be related to sanctions, and on the other hand to the opposite, opposing measures of Putin taken in foreign policy. Next. Vladislas, please. I think that the Trump zone in the Western world might expand. In France, we'll surely see the winning presidential candidate who is more loyal to Putin, which will change the situation, but hardly radically. There'll hardly be friendship or immediate friendship between Putin and the Western troublemakers. Too early for that. And the main event of 2017, I agree, will be a lack of events, because that'll be the year of preparation for events of 2018 presidential election, and surely there'll be a lot of nervousness related to that. The masses will be waiting for 2018, and that's the threat of 2018, not the year of 2017. Who is left? Helmut and Tatyana. As the situation in Russia will be under control, there'll be enough money for TV, media control, and army control. There'll be no domestic problems, but there might be external difficulties which possibly are even needed to mobilize support. So the black swan comes from the outside. Globally, there are too many tribe leaders, and out of the 24, there might be one that starts a great march against. That might be Marine Le Pen, Turkey, Belarus. European leaders possibly are not that fearful. But if a leader like Lukashenko starts a fight with Putin, that might look differently. And then Russia will have to get involved into confrontation-like relations with some of its neighbors, be it in the West or in the East. There are too many of them wishing to start that, and Putin, as a real cowboy, will have to respond. And the inertia scenario still means that Russia will get confined in its own borders, which might be quite sufficient for the coming 10 years. As to the reaction of tough actions of some foreign guys, well, this might present difficulties. I beware difficulties in relations with Belarus related to Kaliningrad Oblast. Economic problems are not the top-ranking ones. There'll be enough money, but some heated contradictions might start at the different level and undermine the present day sustainability. Premier says there's not enough money, and he says there's enough money. And those who don't get money now will not get the money then either. I want to follow up the most serious situation along the perimeter of the Russian borders might be with Turkey. There's Islamic authoritarianism of Erdogan, and the opposition of the major part of the situation to it. There was an attempt at a coup, which didn't solve the situation, but this is the borderline country, and much depends on what is going on in Syria, on the situation in Turkey. And next year we might expect some events in Turkey which might be too relevant for the Russian Federation directly or indirectly, and terrorist upsurge in Turkey might not miss us either. Well, everything was already said. I just want to sum up. It seems that there are no political prerequisites within Russia for radical changes in 2017, but any worsening of the global situation, be it in Turkey or other parts of the world, will tell on Russia negatively and might be a trigger of some domestic disturbance. Yet I do think that they will not happen in 2017. And as for 2018, we'll discuss that at our next Gaidar forum. Now it's my turn with the forecast. I think that two things might happen. First, that the romance between Trump and Putin will come to its end by the end of the year. Our regime needs to have an enemy, and well, there should be some enemy to blame for the dirt in the streets, for the economic situation, and well, who might that be if not the U.S.? Well, there might also be some domestic enemy, which is quite nice, except for one thing. If that domestic enemy lives too long and produces too much shit, then the idea might come that possibly the authority is too weak not to cope with that. As for Trump, it all will work nice, and there'll be no love but hate coming. And in the second half of 2017, there'll be other external political or domestic political aggravation of the situation, either a Cold War with somebody or war against some internal or domestic enemy, to come to the election of 2018 with the due degree of consolidation. And we'll see that in January of 2018. My wish for the country and us all is we started 2017, and all that happened previously in 1914, 1915, well, that was very important, and we keep comparing the years of this century with the years of last century. Stop doing that. Stop comparing the previous years with what happened 100 years ago. This will mean that we started living a due life. Thank you very much, and I hope we'll meet again next year, and possibly in a green hall. Thank you.